Welcome to the Abundant Life Family Podcast. I'm Bill.
And I'm Jen.
We're the Hildebrands, and we're helping build families that last. Today we have Natalie, a counselor, with us, and she's going to share with us how we can have tools to be able to talk to younger children. Natalie, it's great to have you with us today, and I've noticed that you have tons of letters behind your name. That doesn't mean much to us, but somebody in counseling would know that that means a lot. So we're really appreciative that you've taken your time to be with us today.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit of your story.
Yeah, so I'm currently a counselor at Abundant Life Counseling Center in Lee Summit. I have grown up in a Christian home. My parents worked with kids. My mom was a teacher and my dad was a pediatric dentist. And so I just grew up knowing the most important people in my life worked with children. They were also children's pastors for 10 years. And just being around that environment, I grew up knowing that I wanted to work with kids to some capacity. So I went to college at Park University and studied elementary education. I thought I wanted to be a teacher. When I got in the field, I realized I loved the working with children on one-on-one capacity rather than it being a whole group. And so I learned a little bit about counseling and what that would look like. And so I went to MNU and got my master's in counseling, and the rest is history. I'm working as a counselor. I did get my play therapy certification at MNU as well. Learned a lot about kids and how to work with them.
So you said briefly what the difference is between a classroom, being a school teacher, and being a counselor. But you kind of light up when you talk about being a counselor. What are some of the things you enjoy?
I love whenever a person comes to counseling for the first time, they may feel embarrassed or a lot of shame about why they're coming in, or they're really nervous. They are worried that the counselor is going to judge them and about the problems that they're coming in for. And I love reteaching them about what counseling is, and even letting them see themselves in a different light for the first time. Maybe in their whole life, they never have seen themselves in a positive light. And so I love seeing the change, and I just love, I just love inspiring people and letting them see their best self and what they can be, and even just giving a glimmer of hope into a situation that could be really hard. It's so inspiring, and it really gives me the wings to fly. When I go home at night, I just feel like there was a lot of good work done that day.
I think that when it comes to our kids and just wanting to get them the support that they need, that, when you have a good counselor who can really reach your kids, that's just so powerful. I know, with us, with our 4 sons and living in Kenya, and, there was a time when one of our boys was just really in a rough spot, having a hard time, learning, just being able to communicate what was even going on. But he kept acting out. And we as parents were like, what is going on? And we didn't know what to do. So we, thank goodness, we're thankful there was a counselor there. And I went and talked to her, and she was able to just give me some really good pointers of maybe what was going on in our son's head and kind of how to start communicating with him outside of just talking. And it was a game changer. And so I'm so thankful that there was a counselor there who knew how to work with kids specifically. And so we're just thankful for what you do and just the power of being able to have that accessible to us. So thank you for that.
Of course. And it's so different working with an adult versus a child. So sometimes parents come in, they don't expect what it's going to look like, or they think, we're just going to sit on the couches and tell them why it's bad that they're doing what they're doing. And so working with kids looks a lot different just because of their brains. They're completely different than adults. So
now briefly, just if a parent is thinking, I just don't know if my kid needs counseling or not. What are some ways that we can tell?
Yeah, that's a big question. I always like to explain to parents if the problem is persistent, right? So a child can be angry, maybe they have an anger outburst, maybe something unusual is going on, they have a new sibling. There are times where it's normal, it's acceptable for there to be problems to go on. But if the problem persists and the child can't seem to get over it, maybe they're angry every day, they're having problems at school. Maybe they're crying every morning because they don't want to leave mom and dad, having separation anxiety. Something really big happened in their life, like a trauma. It would be a good sign to bring them to counseling just to get some support, see why they may be stuck.
Now, I know you mentioned play therapy. There's going to be parents watching us. There's going to be other adults who know kids, work with kids, or grandparents like we are now.
Yeah.
So what are some tools that we can help pass along to people working with kids?
Of course. I think the first thing I always love to hone in on whenever somebody's working with a child is to be intentional with the attention you give them, right? Kids are often, they're overlooked, especially if, maybe they're always the bad behavior child and they're acting out. Usually it's a good sign that they're not getting positive attention that they may need in their life. So if you're a teacher or a grandparent or an aunt or an uncle, whoever you are in the child's life, making sure you're being intentional with, even if it's just like a 5-minute check-in, do eye contact with the child. It means so much to them to know that they're valued and important and cherished in your life.
Yeah. I remember when we went and talked to a child counselor, and that was one of the main things. It was, we were in a setting where there were lots of kids, and our kids were trying to find their place amongst all these kids. And that was like her number one thing was like, Jennifer, you and Bill have got to be so much more intentional with your own boys and getting down, looking at them in the eyes and finding ways to play, go outside, throw the ball. It required a lot of intentionality, for us. And that's so helpful.
It's so helpful because kids are in school 5 days a week and 7 hours a day, 7 to 8, even more if they're in sports, and they're in groups of kids. So it's so often you think they're getting attention all day, but usually, they're a child in a classroom of 25 and teachers are overworked. So they come home maybe not having that attention that they need. And it's easy for parents to be busy or, think they're okay. And they neglect the importance of just getting on the child's level and spending that quality time with them, making sure that they're seen. Being seen is such a need for us as people, right? We want to be seen and known. And
so what do we say, to parents who are just working? They work. It's easy for us, to sit here and say, to be intentional, is there anything that would be helpful? I mean, I even know for Bill and I being busy, like, how do we make that more, how do we create space in our own lives for, like, what would you say to that parent?
Of course. It's such a common phenomenon, right?
It totally is. We're busy.
So busy. And usually now we have both parents working, maybe a single parent family as well, or grandparents. So it does get very busy and really hard. And the one thing I love to tell parents is there's a lot of shame usually with we don't have enough time, right? I'm so tired when I get home from work. I can't go take them to go shopping or do this elaborate activity with them. I just don't have the capacity to do it. So I love to tell them, even if it's just 5 to 10 minutes a day, right? I think everybody can find at least 5 minutes out of their day to just be honed in on that child. So maybe their favorite thing is to make Legos, or their favorite thing is to play with dolls, or whatever it could be. You enter in the blank statement there. Just spending that time invested in that child's play, or if it's a teen, invested in their life, talking without distractions, without your cell phone there. Our cell phones are one of the biggest, such a big distraction, and kids notice, they see that phone and it thinks, that phone is more important than me right now. Mom and dad have a lot more
So
going
put the
on.
phone away.
Putting the phone away, yes.
Going right along with that, I heard you say one time about when a parent walks in the door that it's so important to take those first few moments to really connect with the kid and put your stuff down, but just connect with the kid. Don't go off and change clothes and answer emails, texts, whatever. Spend a few minutes with your kid.
Yeah, the importance of having a ritual when you come home, even if it's a handshake or a hug, so the child sees that you acknowledge them, right? That they're not less important than dinner being made, or they're not less important than a work phone call, and things happen, right? Sometimes you can't stop what you're doing, but I like to give this analogy of we call it like a sliding door moment, right? It's these little moments over time that when it's a pattern, a child knows they can expect a hug or a smile or pat on the back when they come home, right? That helps them have that safety and rapport built up with you.
And I missed, what did you call it? A sliding door?
Sliding door moment. There was a movie, I've never seen it, but it's a movie that was very popular a few years ago. And it's about a woman who, she misses a bus, the door stops before she gets on the bus, and it shows her life missing the train, and then her life if she had gotten on the train, and how different her life looked before and after. So it's a reference to that. They usually use it in marriage counseling, but it's very important when we're working with kids and parents as well. Those little moments over time, you can look back and say, oh, I didn't give them enough attention when I came home, or they were by themselves playing a lot. They're really important, those little moments. So don't neglect those small moments, because over time they build up to be really significant.
That's so good. So even like 5 minutes can make a big difference.
That's right.
That's attainable. That's
great. Jennifer grew up with a family that was loud and, but my family was very, very quiet. We would stuff it in. We wouldn't talk about anything. And so we're extremes. We come from extremes. How important is it that we have a safe place for our kids?
Yeah, very important. And I would say it's pretty typical to have a mom and dad from very different backgrounds and how they communicate and the family style. It's very important for kids to know that they can talk, right? It doesn't really matter what your family dynamic is, or, you can be loud and still overlook something, or you can be quiet and teach them to stuff it down. So it's really working with the family that you have and making sure you're doing those check-ins with the child, noticing what they're feeling. In my work with counseling, and I teach parents usually how to notice what their child's feeling. So sometimes kids, they don't know how to express it. They can't verbalize, well, I'm mad because my sister just stole the TV and I wanted to watch this show and she was watching this. Sometimes they can't verbalize. They're just going to act out. They're just going to yell. And so having the parent tell them what they're feeling in that moment can help them build emotional intelligence. So let's say your child's so angry, they're about to go punch their sibling, can pause them and say, you were so angry because she was about to take the TV and you really wanted it. That's so frustrating. So acknowledge, have some empathy for that. For them, that's really big. It may not seem like a big deal for us as adults, but having empathy for why they're upset and showing that, yeah, that is really hard, right? And then sometimes giving them options of what to do from there. So instead of hitting your sister, why don't we go into your room and you can go watch a movie in there? Or why don't you help me make dinner or something along the line? So giving them an option on how to de-escalate.
We're a dad of 4 boys, parents of 4 boys. Go out and jump on the trampoline, go ride your bike, go out and get rid of some energy.
Yes, yeah.
I want to piggyback on, you use the term emotional intelligence. That's, something as Bill and I worked with missionary families and learning emotional intelligence has really been a game changer, for us as we've worked with families, because we realize as families, we talk a lot about our kids' academic abilities. We want to make sure our kids have the right school. Is it to homeschool? Is it to public school? Is it, what is it? So we're very, as parents, engaged in our kids' academic intelligence, and then for us and families who love Jesus, it's important for us to make sure our kids have spiritual intelligence. We want them to go to church. We want them, to read their Bibles. We're very invested in their spiritual intelligence. But I know that we have found that as parents, we're not as knowledgeable and we're not as intentional when it comes to our children's emotional intelligence. And I think it's so important, as we found with our own boys, giving them the language to say, I'm afraid or I'm angry, and allowing them to say those things is so important. And we have just found over and over how great it is to be able to give our kids the permission to feel those emotions.
Yes.
I know as a parent, I was fast to say, oh, you'll be okay, or you don't need to be afraid. We need to let them, feel those things. So,
of course, yes, yeah. And I feel like so often it's sometimes out of fear of the parent, right? And not everybody grows up in a perfect home or they were modeled this. It's so common. That's a really common reason why parents will bring their children to play therapy, because they think, I don't have the tools. I was never modeled this. And what a great time to get those tools, right? You don't have to come from a perfect family to be able to start at any time with your children on how to learn that and retrain your mind. It's your brain is flexible, it's adaptable, no matter how you grew up or what you were taught. And so you can bring healing to your mind for sure.
And as we teach them to express those emotions and describe those emotions, gain emotional intelligence. I know working with college students, we were showing them like an emotion wheel. And so to have just a few emotional words, happy, sad, mad, angry, whatever, on the inside. But as you broke out to farther and farther around the wheel, there were much more descriptive terms. And so it helped to put language to their feelings, specifically regret, and different emotions like that. Are there things available for parents like that, and especially for smaller kids? Is that helpful?
Of course. I love the emotion wheel. I use it almost every day working with kids and adults too.
Because people don't know how to identify what they're feeling, right?
Yeah, we don't know. I always like to say, name it to tame it, right? Once that emotion is named, you can just feel in the room, it's like, oh, that's it. That's what I'm feeling. And the person can connect it and know, wow, and this is the reason why, and then backtrack from there. So emotion wheels are, if a parent is wanting that resource, you can just Google emotion wheel and you will find multiple different options to use with your child. Yes, it's so helpful.
So let's say that, like for Bill and I, when we recognized one of our sons needed some extra help and we wanted him to go to a good counselor, what does that look like as a parent? What should I look for?
Yeah, it's a really good question. Specifically, if you're wanting someone to work with kids, I would look for somebody who's play therapy trained, or we call them an RPT, which is registered play therapist. And so that shows that the person has had a lot of training, that they have a lot of tools to work with kids, that they're not just going to sit your child on the couch and try to talk to them, but they have a lot of understanding around that. Someone who is kind, has a good disposition to work with a child, right? They're not going to become upset if the child makes a huge mess. They can keep their composure. And someone who the child connects with is a big part, because we all have different personalities. So one child may need somebody a lot more gentle. Somebody may want somebody who's a lot more bubbly. Finding someone who's a good fit for your child. We like to say the relationship with counseling is 70% of the success. So if you have a counselor who really connects well with your child, you've almost made it. Yes, so important. I would say a more specific tip is, this is kind of a red flag to look for. If a counselor is wanting the first meeting with the parents to be with the child, that is kind of awkward for the child to hear about all the bad behaviors that they're doing, and it can be really shaming. So if the counselor doesn't suggest it, I would suggest to go just with mom and dad or mom or whoever's bringing the child
Okay,
to go
that's
over
good to know.
problems. Yes, yeah. We don't want the child to hear all that stuff, right?
Right.
That's right. Well, tell me this: does Abundant Life, the church that we are all working for, does Abundant Life have online options for counseling? Because I know they have. How many counselors are there on staff right now?
I bet there's about 30 to 40. I don't have the exact number. It's
huge counseling department.
Huge counseling department.
And that's great for those that live in the Lee Summit area. But what if you don't live in the Lee Summit area? Is there online options? Can you do online counseling?
Yes, there are online options. With children, it's limited, right? It's kind of hard to have a child's attention span be held over telehealth for too long. But we do offer online counseling as long as your counselor is licensed in the state that you are in. Unless it's a biblical counselor and they don't have a state licensure, they would be able to meet with anybody wherever you're at. So making sure that if I'm in the state of Missouri, I'm a licensure in Missouri, I can meet with anybody who's in Missouri. But I couldn't see anybody beyond that, unfortunately.
So I'm trying to remember some of the keys to take away from today.
Oh man, I pulled away just that we need to be intentional. And even just 5 minutes can make a big difference.
Being present, listening, trying to get them to talk as well. Looking for play. That's the key word. Play therapy.
Play therapy, yes.
When you're looking for a counselor for your kids, if you can't remember all those other things, just remember play. Do they play?
And I don't think we said, why is play therapy, just quickly, why is play therapy so powerful?
Of course. So we say that play is the most developmentally appropriate form of therapy for kids because kids, their brains are not developed to the capacity to be able to explain in words. Sometimes you may have kids that are better at it than others, but typically they're going to act out and show you how they're feeling rather than being able to tell you. So it helps the counselor see the problems in the room and things that can be worked on. And it can also help them see what the child's feeling with those issues currently too. So very powerful.
So if you're looking for counseling for your kiddo, I think that would be something you definitely want to have for your kids. So
very important. Yeah.
So Natalie, I got this kid that, let's say he's a preteen and he will not talk. How do I get him to open up and start talking a little bit?
Is so common, and counselors find the same problems when they work with teens or preteens. The advice I've been given is just don't press in, don't ask a bunch of questions, right? That's going to get them more reserved. So if they come home and you're going to ask, how was school? And who's your friends? And what are you doing? Why are you feeling this way? And so they're going to want to retreat even more. So just being a space, meeting them where they're at. So sometimes for a whole session, I will just play Uno with them and just let them talk as they want to give me information. But I'm not highlighting the problem. You are here because you're so angry all the time and we need to fix that. That would be really bad practice. So I'm just being a space, a safe space for them that if they need to share something with me, they can, and they know.
So I'm a parent, and I just found out from my kid that he spent a whole hour with you playing Uno, and I'm thinking, I paid for you to play Uno? What? But that's so important, isn't it? Because it helps, make a safe space.
Yes, we're building a house. As every counseling session, if the foundation isn't built, then it's not going to hold up very well. So we really need that foundation set.
That's good. And can parents do that as well? Maybe play Uno or do something?
Yes, just being a safe space, being there for them, meeting them with what their interests are. I'm not really sure what all the teen interests are these days. It keeps changing, but maybe they're into a certain book series or a movie or TV show or hobby that they really like to do. Maybe they play a sport, right? So meet them where they're at with what their interests are. And you can build a really good relationship just based off that. And the more that they know that they're valued and their interests are valued by you, they can open up about more things in their lives.
Those are great.
Yeah.
What about a blended family? Boy, there's never any baggage that goes along with that. And kids, sure, they're resilient, but what do you see? How can parents help their kids in a blended, especially if it's a new thing?
Yes, I think a common problem that parents will come to whenever there's a blended family is they don't like my new wife, they don't like my new husband, right? This new spouse that feels like is replacing their other mom and dad can be really hard. And so what happens is sometimes we try to push it more on them, like, this is your mom, you're gonna call her mom, or you need to respect her. And right, respect isn't given all the time, it's earned over time. And so I always like to tell them to not expect for them to click right away. Because if someone's being thrown into your life without you, they don't get married to the new spouse. It wasn't their choice to bring them in the family. But just being there consistently, not forcing it on them, is a huge gift to the child, that they can have that slow adjustment period and expect it may be hard, it may be difficult. You may see things that are hard for the child, but it's a normal adjustment for them.
It just takes time.
It takes time and consistency. Yes.
Now, as we settle into our role in family ministry, I know that we get a lot of questions asked about fostering and, foster, adoption, but any kid can face lots of trauma. How can we as adults help kids through trauma?
I think one of the biggest pieces of advice I've gotten is, especially kids coming from foster families, we don't know what their situation, we may have some details, but we don't know everything that they're coming from. And I always like to tell parents, if the child's having a big behavior and they're wondering, well, all we did was bake cookies together, why are they having this outburst? Or, we just wanted to watch a movie. That trauma, whatever happened to them, sometimes there are cues that are going to trigger that alarm bell in their brain, and they may not even be able to vocalize it. It could be a smell they remember. It could be a sight. It could be a sound, like a banging could bring back some flashbacks, or maybe not even flashbacks. Their body's just telling them something's not safe, right? So I would try to get an understanding of what types of sensory things are triggers for your child, especially a foster kid, or if you've adopted a child, learning what those triggers are. So sometimes it could even be, maybe I'm wearing a lotion and it's got that scent, and a child all of a sudden they're acting really strange or out of character. Maybe it could be something as small as that. So being aware of learning what their trigger patterns are, and if you can't get to a counselor, those are things you can do in your own household with your foster kids or adoptive kids, or even kids that have gone through trauma.
What do I do for the kid that, every kid has anger, but my kid just seems to have lots of anger? And what do I do? How do I know when I need to reach out and get help?
Yeah. I think one of the biggest signs is if the child is harming other kids. So they may have siblings and they're putting them in very dangerous situations, right? You're worried about the safety of your other kids, even the safety of you as a parent too. You don't know what the extent of this anger is going to look like. That is a really good sign that it's time to get professional help involved, just to keep everybody safe in the household. If they're even a harm to themselves too, right? Sometimes kids are completely having like this almost out of body experience. They're just not even aware of what they're doing, and they can hurt themselves. So making sure that they're getting the help they need then would be my biggest tip. Helping them de-escalate, knowing that their brain is in a place where it can't connect, it can't make sense of what's happening. So if you tell them, this is so bad, why are you doing this? They're not going to understand that. So getting them safe is the first step. After that, helping them get calm. So it may be getting some movement, walking back and forth, taking a walk in the neighborhood, maybe even sometimes rocking them back and forth can help get their brain back online. So we call it flipping the lid in counseling. So when a child flips their lid, they're not able to access the part of the brain that's responsible for decision making and understanding consequences. They're working out of fight or flight only. So they are not thinking through when they're in that state. So helping them be safe, and you have to lead a lot.
So try to de-escalate, calm. But you also mentioned reaching out for help, professional help. What does that look like? Is there like a counseling police department that we can call when my kid is blowing up, you know?
Yeah, I mean, sometimes if it gets bad enough, sometimes it is calling 911 to make sure everybody is safe. And sometimes if you're able to get them safe in the moment, I mean, I would call the next day. It's time to get a counselor involved in this, and finding someone with openings and finding someone as soon as possible and expressing the need for it to that counselor. So maybe they can move you up on the wait list if it's a more serious situation.
Well, thank you so much for being with us today. I'd like to close us in prayer if you don't mind.
Yes, I would love that.
Thank you, Jesus, for allowing us this time together. And I pray that the things that we've been able to talk about will be a blessing to all who are hearing, and that each of us can be able to do a better job of communicating with the children around us. And I just thank you for Natalie. Continue to bless her ministry of counseling. We love you, Jesus. Amen.
Amen.
Thanks again for being with us.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of the Abundant Life Family Podcast. If you found this helpful for your family, hit like and subscribe below. And feel free to drop a comment or question below. To learn more about the Abundant Life Family Ministry and the 10-mile markers to help you win at building families that last, go to our website at livingproof.co/family.